Greetings. I couldn't do a video last week because I was still kind of in distress. The election was last Tuesday, but as of Thursday, we still had no real idea who was going to be elected president. And it wasn't until sometime Friday when it was finally called that Joe Biden had won the election. And even then, when you're thinking, finally, all the pressure is off, and now we've got a decision, we don't fully have a decision. We actually do. Biden can't lose. He can't be overruled. It's totally done. And folks, you know what? I just got to say this. If you still think that this orange man, but I never say his name, is going to go to court and win anything, you're sadly mistaken. He's already been overruled in every single state that he's put something in. And the states that he's actually shooting for, if he wins all the rest of those states, he still loses. So it's over. It's done. But y'all are being hoodwinked. You're being tricked. You're being lied to. And you love it. And I got to do this. I've got to tell my story here. I got to give my opinion on it. But I'm going to say something before I go any further. That being, it's okay if you disagree with my assessment. It's okay if you comment and you disagree on my assessment. It's even okay if you give me thumbs down. But you know what you're not going to get? If I get any bad words on it, well, YouTube's going to block that. So don't even try that because YouTube blocks all that stuff. If I get one-line things that say anything, that's going to be blocked. Any racist content that comes my way, YouTube's going to block it. So unless you have a cogent argument against anything I say, and I mean cogent, you better be able to prove it. Because if you can't, it ain't going to stay. It's just not going to be there. I'm not one of those people who gets 100,000 views on a video. It's not going to happen. So it's going to be easy for me to look and see what someone said. And by the way, here's one last thing. If you're someone who has 10 or less viewers or subscribers to your channel, I don't care what you have to say. If you haven't created any content, I don't care what you have to say. You're gone. It's just how it's going to be. If you're not behaving properly, I'll say that. So, with that said, let's look at why there's so many people who wonder about the ethics of the people who voted for the orange guy. Like I said, I don't say his name, but here's the deal. Right now, Biden is up 5.5 million votes on the orange guy. But 70 million people voted for this guy. That is scary. That is very scary. The polls kind of indicated something where it said that Biden was up 8%, 8% in votes. I didn't believe it for a second because, frankly, there's a whole lot of people I don't trust. The pollsters kind of got it wrong. They had it right that Biden seemed to be ahead, but the numbers were so far off. I didn't trust it. I just didn't. And that's how come I was stressed. I was stressed to a point that I basically signed off of social media for a few days. Just couldn't deal with it. But seeing 70 million people still voted for this guy after the 4 years we've been through, let's talk about your ethics for a bit. Let me explain that. And you notice I'm using ethics. I'm not using any of the other stuff that I could as far as the title goes. I'm going to go into some things, but it just has to be said. So here's the first thing. All you religious people who decided to vote for him because you thought he was your savior, and you can say anything you want to. That's why you did it. Y'all are just incredibly dense. I know there were a lot of evangelicals, because that's what they call it, evangelicals who voted for him because your leader told you to do it. People, you got to stop acting like sheeple and have your own mindset. Here's the thing. You voted for a guy who, in 4 years, only showed up at a church once, and that was when he kicked all these other people out of the way using the military so that he could get a photo op with a Bible. He didn't go to church. He never went to church. He didn't go to church beforehand. You know who went to church every single Sunday? Obama. The people who were calling him Muslim saw him going to church every single Sunday. You thought he was faking that? He didn't have to fake that. He certainly didn't have to fake it after the first 4 years. The second 4, if he really didn't care, he didn't have to go. What were we going to do? You couldn't do anything to him at that point if he decided he wasn't going to church. But he went. You know who else went? Joe Biden went to church every single Sunday. So, this is the guy that you decided to support? The man who never went to church? Now, as far as I'm concerned, being atheist, I could care less if he went to church or not. But finding all these church leaders saying to you folks, you got to go out there and vote for him. What was the motivation for that? I just want to know. I really want to know why you went. That's one of those first things to question about your ethics. The second thing, how he treated women. Let's talk about his supposed wives, the women he supposedly loved. He cheated on every single one. He's cheated on Melania. Matter of fact, it was Melania who was pregnant with his son when he was caught in bed, or owned up to it, with a hooker. She's giving birth to a child and he's with another woman. They paid people off for that over the years. And y'all know this. This is the guy who you think you want to lead the country, who you want to represent America to the rest of the world. This guy, this is the same guy who went on Howard Stern. I don't even know how many years ago it was. And Howard Stern asked him a question that really was kind of a sexist question about his own daughter. And he says, yeah, I agree with that. It's like, dude, that's your daughter. I'm not saying he ever molested her, because I think that had he done that, she would have got him and he'd have never become president. So I'm not saying that, but I can't believe that you would support a guy who would say something like that about his own daughter. I can't believe you would say something about a guy like that. The only time he ever apologized in a 5-year period was when they had him on video saying this thing about Billy, to Billy Bush, about what you do to women. And then they called it locker room talk. That's not locker room talk. There's not a locker room in America where you hear that kind of talk. Gyms are different. It doesn't happen. It didn't happen in sports way back in the day. Nobody talked like that. And then all these guys came out saying, well, that's locker room talk. And it's not locker room talk. I bet Mitch McConnell going into his, okay, maybe not Mitch McConnell, because I'm not sure if he ever went to a gym, but I bet none of those guys go to gyms and they have conversations with people like that. Especially if they're politicians. It's not going to happen. All it takes is one person to tape that and give it to the news, and they're done. So that's a lie. He cheated on his own wives. He's cheated on the country, by the way. But I'll get back to that later. Then all the women who disagree with him, whether they are Democrats or Republicans or anything else, he calls them nasty women. Leaders of other countries, if he's had to disagree with them, I think she's a nasty woman. Every woman who disagrees with him in public in some way, he calls a nasty woman. I'm sure he calls them other things when he's by himself. But let's face it. You think that every single woman who disagrees with him is that? His own relatives, by the way. Mary Trump, who wrote the book about him. And no, I didn't read the book. Didn't need to. She wasn't going to say anything that I didn't already know in some way. But, he went after his own niece, and she's got the goods on him. And you know what scared him so much? Is that he knew that she knew the truth. She had all the stuff. The woman's a PhD. She's intelligent. And they sued hard to get that book stopped. But you can't do that. Just because you're president of the United States does not mean you can ban a book. Every president has had books written about them. I can't remember the guy's name who wrote the book about Obama while he was president. He made up a whole bunch of stuff. He had no real information to back it up. But, people do that. There were a whole lot of books about Hillary Clinton before she ran for office. I'm sure there's a book out there about Joe Biden somewhere. You didn't see any of those people going to court to try to stop it, do you? Why? Because they knew it wasn't true. But this dude knew it was true. He tried to stop it. And he couldn't. His proven racism. Come on. It wasn't until after the first debate this year when he finally said he disagreed with the KKK. He couldn't do that for 4 years. He just couldn't do it. Every right-wing, white supremacist group that did anything, he would say, well, there was trouble on both sides. Oh, come on. Let's think about this for a minute. So yes, you had protesters from both sides at a certain place. But what side had the guns? What side was wearing the MAGA hats? It wasn't the peaceful protesters. It was the guys with the guns. What was the thing with the Proud Boys? I can't even remember the phrase. Who cares what the phrase was? He couldn't condemn that. He knows what he said. The rest of the world know what he said. What about the stuff he said about Mexicans? For all the Latinos in Florida who decided to vote for him because you got money. Think about what he did. First he said Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Mexico didn't pay for the wall. That was money that was supposed to go somewhere else, which, by the way, he illegally took and used for the wall portion of it anyway. He separated parents from their children. He put children in cages, tried to blame that on Obama. They never did that. It didn't happen. But he did. And then they lost children. They lost parents. They had no idea where anyone was. They got sick kids down there. And by the way, they started sterilizing some of the women. That is illegal. That's an invasion. But you know what? He's got Barr, who refuses to do anything about it because there's a guy who forgot what his job is supposed to be. His job is not supposed to be to protect the president. His job is supposed to be to protect the country. And he didn't do it. So, you know what? Easy racism. But y'all voted for him. 70 million of you. I don't care what your reason was. You probably don't think you're racist, but you voted for a man, 70 million of you, who you knew was a racist. What's your ethics on that? Let's talk about the lies concerning the pandemic. He told everybody, yeah, we're going to have this solved. This is only going to be maybe a few weeks and we'll be gone. He kept saying that, even though it turns out late last year, he told Bob Woodward something totally different. He's on tape. He's recorded. He said it. He knew it was more dangerous than the regular flu, but he didn't tell anybody. He wouldn't wear a mask. And then when it came out, people said, well, that's a good leader. He didn't want us to panic. No, that's a bad leader. A good leader would have wanted to save as many people as possible. You know what? Here's the thing. Had he done that, he probably would have beat Biden. That was his major mistake right there. Thank you for that, by the way, for the stupid mistake. Luckily in New York, we had a governor who told us to do something better. Luckily, most of us actually trusted Fauci rather than the orange guy, who basically caught the disease. And then he had to go to the hospital and get some of the best treatment. He comes out and he says, it's not a big deal. He got medications and treatment that average people could not get. I actually put it out there one time. During the year, there were some people who were saying mess on Twitter. And I asked a few of them, excuse me, would you like to go into a hospital if you want to stick with this thing where you're saying that it's a hoax? Because I'm in healthcare finance. I know people all across the country. I said, I would like to find a way to get you into a hospital to walk through an ICU unit of people who are sick with this thing. See if you'll do it without a mask, without anything else, short sleeve shirt. Go through there and tell me that those people are faking it, that this is not a real thing. Nobody wants to do that because they know deep in their heart that it's a real thing. And after the orange guy got it, you would have thought that people would have said, hey, this is the real thing, because you were following him all along and you still were stupid. And a lot of people have gotten it. And a lot of people died from it. And a lot of people who died from it were people who believed him. That happened here, locally, where a man was watching Fox Spews, because that's what I call them, Fox Spews, and he thought that they were just telling the truth. He believed them. And he didn't do anything. He was 66 years old. And he caught it. He didn't have to catch that. And he died, and his entire family, they had a big news story on it. And they even said he just always watched that channel. He always believed the president. He always thought that he was the honest guy. It's like, how would you think he was honest? He's never been honest. The guy has been doing stuff for, let's see, at least since the 70s. We knew what he was. We're New Yorkers. This guy was from New York. Although I don't know if he was actually born here or whatever, but still, we knew what he was. He got crushed by Clinton in New York State. So, even now, even after the fact, how many people did he have in the lawn where they were talking about this Amy Barrett lady who's now the Supreme Court Justice? How many of those people ended up catching it? How many people probably passed it on to their families? A whole bunch. The former governor of New Jersey, Christie, ended up in the hospital for a week. Almost died. He was on a respirator. He came out afterwards. You know what? I was wrong. I'm sorry. I trusted that they had screened everybody. Herman Cain passed away. Ben Carson now has it, by the way. That Kelly McKelly, I can't pronounce her name. The woman, the press secretary, whatever her name is, she caught it. Melania got it. I just don't know. And yet, you folks knew he lied, and you voted for him. 70 million of you. There's your ethics right there. The narcissism. Everything was about him. He never accepted responsibility for anything. He never gave credit to anybody else. He took credit for everything that he thought was a good thing, and he blamed everyone else if something went bad. It doesn't work that way. Harry Truman, the buck stops here. Dwight Eisenhower, he knew how things went. You're the top guy. If something bad happens, you take responsibility for it. John Kennedy did it. Richard Nixon, you know? Lyndon Johnson took blame for stuff. Jimmy Carter took blame for stuff. Even Ronald Reagan took blame for a couple of things. You know? We had Iran-Contra. Reagan took blame for that. I don't know that Reagan actually knew that that had happened at the time, but he took blame for it. That's what you're supposed to do when you're in a big leadership position. And think about it. Can't nobody fire you. You can't get fired. Nothing else can happen. Own up to it. You look more human. Heck, this guy could have got away with anything. He had already said just before he got elected that he could go on the streets of Manhattan, kill people, and people would give him a medal. It was always just about him. Even now, he can't accept the fact that he lost this election in multiple ways. And he's taking the money. And by the way, my next point, which is number 7, the lawsuits. You know how he's suing all these states, saying that this is voter fraud and all this other kind of stuff? You know, all this money that he's requested from all of y'all to help him fight these lawsuits? He's not using the money for that. You think he is, but he's not. Everyone, you know, it's in the news. It's maybe Fox News isn't reporting it, but every other news source is reporting this. He's using the money to create his own super PAC. He's using the money to help build up a few other things. You know, he's in essence, he's paying himself with this money that y'all are giving him to fight in all these states. And you don't see it. But that's what he's doing. He did that back in 2016 where he said, I'm a billionaire. But then he was asking for everybody else to give him money to help him win election. You're a billionaire. $100 million if you really want the job, that's not much out of your pocket. But he didn't have it. We know he doesn't have it because he didn't pay any of his taxes. But he's got a whole bunch of lawsuits waiting for him. There's at least 6 lawsuits waiting for him, which is why he's fighting for this thing to try to stay president, because the only reason he hasn't had to go anywhere or give any information to anybody is because he was the president. And he's got Barr telling everybody that we have to represent him as the president. He's in this office. He can't be concerned with local issues, all this other kind of stuff. Huh. It's already been reported that within a year after he's out of office, he's going to have to come up with $400 million in debt payments back. And he doesn't have it. He's not that good a businessman. He's never been that good a businessman. I actually stayed at one of his hotels back in 1989 before the George Foreman, Evander Holyfield fight. I was in the exact same hotel, but I left a couple of days later because I didn't realize at the time, because we didn't have internet back then, that they were fighting in the exact same hotel I was staying in. But it was a big, shiny hotel. It was beautiful. And then he sold them off. Why? Because he was losing money. Because he had spent too darn much money and the economy was in trouble again. So, there you go. His name stayed on those hotels for a long time, but he didn't own them anymore. He's going to be in trouble. Why do you think that he changed his residence to Florida? Because he's hoping that he gets out of the couple of lawsuits that are already against him in New York. He ain't going to be able to run away from that. Nothing he can do. So, the taxes. So he owned up to the reason, or to the fact that he's paid less than $1,000 in a few years. And he's telling everybody, no, I paid $1 million in tax. Dude, they got the information from the IRS. What are they saying? Everybody in the IRS is lying about you? They don't lie about you. He got the information. They got the information. Yes, you did. And you know how you do that? What you did is because you had a lot of debt. You know where you learned it from? Or at least who learned it like you? Robert Kiyosaki. Because that's how he ends up paying few taxes. He carries a whole lot of debt. Sure, he's got money. He's a rich guy. But he carries a ton of debt so that he can pay very little in taxes. You did the exact same thing. You're no billionaire. You just are not. And it's going to come out. I remember back in the 90s and early 2000s when every year Forbes magazine would come out with a list of all the billionaires, which back then there were a lot fewer than there are now. And his name was never on the list until he called them up and he fussed about it. And then they made him a billionaire. But then the next year they take him off the list again. He just wanted to be seen as a billionaire. But he really wasn't. Look at how he treated all of his ex-wives. Don't even want to get into it. So he's not rich. Not as rich as you think he is. He didn't make as much money off of being the apprentice guy from any of that stuff. And here's the last one I'm going to do. Number 9. I could do a bunch of these, by the way, but I'm going to stop with this one. So what a lot of people have said that voted for him, part of that 70 million, is how much he changed the economy. And he made the economy this and that. And you know what? Yes, the stock market did hit some magic numbers. And yes, some very wealthy people got even wealthier. But a lot of other people didn't. And he boasted about all these jobs that he created. Well, here's the thing. And nobody out of that 70 million wants to go with this. He inherited a healthy economy from President Obama. Remember when Obama got into office back in 2008, and in 2009 when he was inaugurated as president, the stock market was at 6,500. I know because I was investing at that time and I lost a bunch of money and I pulled my money out and it was at 6,500. The housing market was crashing, banks were crashing, a bunch of different businesses were crashing. And Obama was able to build that up and get healthy. And the economy grew and employment grew. But here's the thing. Presidents can only really do so much to get the economy going. But Obama gave money to the car industry. He gave money to banking. There were a whole ton of people who didn't like that. I thought it was actually a smart idea. It was too bad they didn't have enough money to give to all the industries that needed it. But I thought it was a smart idea, and it actually worked. Some of the bank presidents and CEOs probably needed to go to jail for different stuff, but that's a different story entirely. Anyway, the orange guy inherited a booming economy, and it just kept going, and he took all the credit for it. But he did not save the country from any trouble. The country was already doing well. It's just that with everything else he did to help the rich people, they said, wow, look at everything he accomplished here. The economy's thriving. Well, let me ask you a question. How many of you 70 million people actually did better under him? How many of you 70 million people had worse health care under him as he tried to basically kill the ACA? Because I don't use that other word because most of y'all use it as a pejorative, so I don't call it that. But he tried to kill you because he didn't care about you. The coal miners, he said he's going to do that for you. He didn't care about you. He got basically into a fight with China, who decided, okay, you're going to put sanctions on us, we're going to put sanctions on you. That hurt a whole bunch of people in this country and a whole bunch of farmers. And you know what? When the pandemic hit, the reason there was so much stuff missing is because of stuff that China decided to withhold from the United States that we needed. A lot of that stuff we still don't have. So, really, how much better did all of y'all do? You might have felt better, but you didn't feel better because you really had it better. You felt better because your ethics were wrong. Yeah, I said it. And that's why a lot of black people think that some of you are racist. Some of you are racist, by the way, but not everybody. Everybody who voted for him wasn't racist. A lot of people had their different reasons. But you really need to think about your ethics. Joe Biden's a decent guy, by the way. He's always been a decent guy. The Bushes were decent people. Heck, Mitt Romney is a decent guy. They're decent people. The Obamas were decent people. They're still very decent people. Bill Clinton, I may give you that one. Hillary Clinton, the only thing that anyone ever really had on her, and it turns out they didn't really have it. You don't believe me? Go to Snopes. It's where they said that she kind of went after somebody who, I can't remember all the details. But in other words, she protected someone in some lawsuit in some way. She was doing her job, by the way, which is what lawyers do. And yes, we know about Monica Lewinsky, but that was Bill Clinton. No one said that Hillary Clinton did anything except she stayed with her man. How many spouses stay with their spouse after they've done something like that? What's she supposed to do? Walk out of the White House and go somewhere forever? Y'all still would have hated her. That was a brilliant woman. There was nothing wrong with her ethics. Bill, on the other hand, you know what? I'll give you that one. There you go. So, those are 9 reasons we question your ethics. We question some of the other stuff too. But I decided, like I said, looking at ethics. Look how long this video has gotten. But I've got it out of my system. I don't have to do any more of this. I can get back to the other stuff I want to talk about. I just had to do this because 70 million people of you voted for the worst dirtbag to hold office in history. And that's saying something because there's been a lot of dirtbags who have held the presidency. Go look it up. I'm not even going to give you any names, but there's a bunch of dirtbags who ended up being elected president who, because we didn't have social media, everyone didn't know about. Heck, I'll give you one, Andrew Jackson. Go look up his history. One of the biggest dirtbags in history. And this guy, he just took the mantle as number 1. Anyway, my name's Mitch Mitchell. I'm putting it out there. And then I'm going to bed. Hope y'all take care. Next week, we get back to more fun stuff, more educational stuff, and some normalcy. Goodbye.